Welcome back to Battleground Blitz Tactics. This is a series that gives an in-depth breakdown of every battleground in the new BG Blitz mode and will give you strategies and tips that'll help you win your games more often. Last episode, I put out a community poll to vote for the next map, and Silvershard Mines took the win with the majority. There will be another community post following the release of this episode, so make sure to vote for which map you'd like to see me cover next. Silvershard Mines took me a lot longer to gather info for than I anticipated, because the more I dug into the battleground, the more cool things I found. And through some experimentation and research, I've got some really cool secrets about the map I'll be sharing that you will not find anywhere else. With that out of the way, my name is Moon, and this is Battleground Blitz Tactics. Alrighty, so as I mentioned in the intro, today we're going to be taking a look at Silvershard Mines. This is a resource race map consisting of 3 active carts that either faction can control, and the first team to 1500 resources wins. So let's talk about the changes from the normal Silvershard Mines over to the new Battleground Blitz mode, that being nothing. Blizzard made the claim that they are happy with the current game pace of Silvershard Mines as is, and thus they have decided to not make any changes to the core gameplay aspect of it in the new Battleground Blitz mode. Personally, I don't believe them 100%, and we'll go into a little bit of this later, but when I've tested some things, there are some things that seem a little bit inconsistent between the two modes. But as it stands currently, there is nothing that changes gameplay-wise, objective-wise, from normal Silvershard Mines to Battleground Blitz. So let's go over some Silvershard Secrets. So there are 2 ways for your team to get points in this mode. That is either to be in control of the cart at the time it reaches the end of the track and captures for your faction, or to be in control of the cart as it goes along the path and obtain residual points. So how much residual points do you get? I ended up measuring this out because I know some of you wanted me to go into more specifics with these maps, so I spent some extra time going over this. Residuals tick at 1 point per cart per tick. What does this mean? This means, for instance, if I am on the Alliance and the Alliance has control of 2 out of the 3 carts, that means for every tick that the residuals give, my team will be getting 2 points. Now, if my team were to capture the cart, be in control of the cart as it reaches the end of the track, it will cash in for 150 points. And I tried to measure this because, like I said, I know some of you guys really like the specifics, like having that precise information to be able to kind of gauge the best strategy. But the issue is with Silvershard Mines, and we'll go over this some more with some more information that I give later on, is that none of the timers are precise. None of anything is precise, and this battleground is kind of an enigma in general. But as it stands now, the residuals for your team, they will tick at a rate of somewhere between 1.7 to 2 seconds. It's not random each time, it's just I wasn't able to exactly get you a pinpoint number because there's just none available, and this is what I could get from testing. So additionally, regarding the cart's capping, is that mid-cart will be the first cart to cap after about 70 seconds into the game, and this is because the first top and mid-cart will spawn prior to the match starting. So if you're trying to come up with an opening strategy for your team at the beginning of every match, it's important that you know that the first 3 carts to cap will be mid first, lava second, then top third, even though that the mid and top timers are longer than lava respectively. And we'll talk about the timers. Actually, you know what? We'll talk about the timers now. When it comes to the map timers for carts as to how long each cart takes to cap, it's important that I note these are estimates because, again, these numbers are not precise. Lava does not capture after 1 minute and 30 seconds, it captures after 86 seconds. If you were to flip this and send the top cart long, it captures after 3 minutes and 54 seconds. But I'm not going to put all these random values on the screen to accidentally overwhelm you or give you too much extraneous information that you don't need to focus on. So that's why I'm giving you nice round whole numbers to consider. Okay, lava captures after about 1.5 minutes, mid captures after about 2 minutes, because these values are easier to keep in mind and will give you enough information to come up with a best strategy, even though it's not the most 100% precise values. But let's talk about a different type of tick. So I talked about the tick before when it comes to residuals and getting residual points for your team, but there's another type of tick that comes to moving the slider as to which team controls a minecart when both teams are fighting in the ring. So as it stands, we know that ticks will push the control of the cart towards one faction. Whatever faction has the majority amount of people in that cart, the slider will begin to move towards the faction that has the majority. Having a background in music, I was able to actually get a good pinpoint of how often the ticks move, and that's at about 50 beats per minute or about 1.2 seconds. It's important to note that all carts, when they initially spawn, will start out as neutral with this slider here completely in the middle. So to go from the middle to complete control of one faction, it takes 21 ticks. If you wanted an estimate, it's about 26 seconds, but again, that goes in the sort of extraneous information. So something else to note about ticks is that if one team has 0 people contesting the minecart and the other team has people inside the minecart, even just 1 person, ticks will move at 3 times the speed. This means that it will only take 7 ticks to fully cap the cart for your faction instead of 21. This is why it is so important to use your crowd control and your knocks and your slows and your roots to keep people out of the cart, because if you can knock every enemy team member outside of the cart, you can capture the cart so fast. Something that I've not tested in the new Battleground Blitz mode because it's really hard to get this situation to occur, but I will give a shout out to Cherry, who is the leader of Oasis, for finding this tip out, is that when you contest a cart, ticks will move at the same speed regardless of the majority differential. So if I have 2 of my teammates, myself and another person, we are contesting a cart with 1 enemy in it. It does not matter if it's just a 2v1 or if a third person joins us, the cart will tick at the exact same speed regardless. This is going to be important later for not overcommitting to carts that don't need the whole team to rush down 1 person. That all you need is a simple majority of +1 to capture a cart for your team. I thought that was something that's really cool, and I thought this is something that you should know as well. And then the last thing regarding the ticks and tricks is that if you were to die inside the minecart, you actually move the slider towards the enemy team by a few ticks. I know Cherry was able to find that it was about 3, but this was from the normal mode, and I've not tested that exact value on BG Blitz. I do have a clip though on my stream of it working, so I do know that if you die inside the minecart ring, it will push the slider a few ticks towards the enemy direction. So let's go on to how do you actually win Silvershard Mines? And that is the question of the century, because this battleground is quite convoluted, dare I say even on the level of Eye of the Storm. So the best strategy depends on your team composition, because you do have to play around your teammates. But the main ways of winning are going to be through either obtaining off carts, and this is going to involve flipping cart directions, but we'll go into that later, or via winning team fights. Team fights are very important on this map, and it's not so much of winning the team fight as in outright killing the enemy team as it is getting crowd control. Obviously, we got our 4 roles as per usual. I split up the DPS into a Teamfight DPS versus an off-cart DPS alongside your normal tank and healer. And I'm not going to do the bit, so I'll just go ahead and flash the chart now. But something I want to mention is that just because I have your spec as like a team fight or an off cart does not mean that you cannot go for either or. It's just that I think the stealth classes, which are going to be Hunter, Druid, and Rogue in this instance, have a better time playing for off carts because they can get that element of surprise. They generally have exceptional mobility. They're generally really good in skirmishes. So these are characteristics that I believe embody a good off cart DPS. There are some, like for instance, I've seen Ret Paladins play for off carts and do pretty well. I've seen some Elemental Shamans go for Nox when they're trying to go for top. And Boomkins, even though they can play for off carts, they're also really exceptional in team fight. So this is just a general guide. It is not a hard line definitive of what's your role, but for those of you who may be struggling to kind of identify where your specialization is, this is sort of a general listing. So let's go into role specific breakdowns. Starting with the tank, you can go for either option. You can sit in an off cart the whole time and collect residuals for your team, or you can be in the team fight, be a nuisance, be unkillable, and be that +1 that's inside the minecart for your team, giving them an advantage when it comes to numbers inside the cart. Personally, I believe you benefit more from off carts. I will say this, I'm not a tank player, I am a healer player, but in my short time that I did play Guardian Druid, I found that I would benefit a lot more from off carts because I wasn't killable. And generally in off carts, people are only going to send 1 to 2 people to come and try to deal with you. So if you're able to use your cooldowns well and you're able to stay alive in the off cart, you're able to keep that cart for your team the whole time, you can benefit greatly. This is going to be kind of like Eye of the Storm 2 if you've been following along with the series, where I believe your best play will be to match whatever the enemy tank does. So if the enemy tank goes for an off cart, you should go for an off cart. You may even find yourself fighting the enemy tank. Personally, if it comes down to one of you sitting either off cart, I believe you should go for the middle off cart as opposed to top, because it just captures quicker and you'd be a better asset for your team that way. But you've got a lot of flexibility here. The main thing is that you are just communicating with your team what you want to be doing, or if your teammates have a better idea of how to best utilize you, you can discuss that with them. Moving on to the healers. Healers, you are, how do I say this in like a very definitive way? You are going to be playing kind of off of a vibe. So you are going to be supporting the team fight and you're going to be peeling out to off carts if necessary, but you're going to be making a lot of judgment calls. And that's what I mean when I say play off a vibe, is that you do want to match your enemy healers, right? You want to try to not overcommit to places you don't need to be, but you are very important on this map because these small skirmishes will matter significantly more than they would on maps where there is like a large definitive team fight. So, you know, if you see that you've got an off cart that is about to cap and there's a rogue that surprised your teammate and is killing your teammate, you got to get to that off cart or else you are going to lose 150 points for your team just off the rip. Granted, you are not responsible for your teammates winning every single skirmish. There is something to be said when it comes to responsibility amongst your DPS and knowing how to play their role right, doing their job right, but you do have some extra power that you can add to these small skirmishes and these off carts by just being there and by healing your teammates. Keeping your teammates alive is going to be absolutely crucial for not only winning the skirmishes, but just having more people in the cart than the enemy team. And as I've mentioned earlier, dying inside the cart can be very bad for your team because it automatically pushes the slider towards the enemy faction. So generally when I say you don't want to overcommit is you really don't want both healers in the same spot if they don't need to be. There are times where there's a very large team fight at lava where there's like 6v6 action going on and then maybe both healers need to be there for a while, but working with your other healer and ensuring that you're covering as much ground as possible and are able to respond to as many small skirmishes as possible will be your best play. Alright, moving on to the Teamfight DPS. You guys are going to be benefiting the most from capturing the lava cart and the mid cart on repeat. You're going to be trying to win team fights outright, secure the cart outright. You want to be using your crowd control on enemy healers because if they can't heal, that gives you a window to score a kill, to land critical damage, or even just crowd control them outright and get more of your teammates in the cart, taking control of the cart. You guys are going to be rotating between carts after securing the cart for your team because what's more than likely going to happen is people are going to, for instance, lose lava, and then as opposed to trying to spawn and go to lava, they're going to rush one of your off carts. So if you know that that's coming and you put yourself in a good position where you can respond really quickly and then win team fight after team fight after team fight, that's going to put you in a really good position to win this battleground. And lastly, you're going to be using your utility and crowd control to keep enemies out of carts. A lot of you guys have slows, roots, crowd control, stuns to lock enemies out of the carts, and I really don't see you guys using this enough. Like DPS, you guys have a lot more power than you give yourself credit for when it comes to team-wide utility. So just using that, keeping people out of the carts, trying to give your team a majority gives you more residuals, gives you more cart captures, all that good stuff. It's just you guys are going to be winning via brute force more so than trying to do some over-the-top strategy. Moving on to my off-cart DPS, you guys are going to be benefiting more often from capping middle and top on repeat. When I say this, I feel like people put too much emphasis on top. Top is a nice cart to have, but ultimately you will have to do something with lava. So we'll go over this more in the strategy, but if you are going to be winning on an off-cart win condition, you're going to want to flip the lever and send lava long. But when it comes to my off-cart DPS as your responsibilities, you're going to be sitting inside the cart the whole time. Make sure you're not stealthing inside the cart too much, because if you stealth inside the cart, the game will count you as not inside the cart. So if somebody were to come and stand in the cart and start to capture it, they will capture it at 3 times the speed, assuming that you have no allies with you. So you're going to look to either crowd control them outside the cart or maybe pop out of stealth for a little bit when you go into your skirmish. Your responsibility is going to be just being really good at these 1v1s, these 2v2 situations to win the small skirmishes, secure the cart, sit inside the cart the whole time so you can collect residuals for your team. Again, crowd control enemy healers if they happen to peel off to your off cart to try and help their team out. Use your utility and crowd control to keep enemies out of the carts, just like your teamfight DPS. You guys have a lot of utility and control, and ensuring that you're using them to keep people out of the carts as opposed to just trying to kill them inside the cart is going to be critical for your success in the off carts. So let's talk about team fighting versus off-cart win conditions. Realistically, it's just going to be on your team composition. Do you have more rogues, hunters, or druids than the enemy team? If yes, play for off-carts. If no, play for team fight. There may be situations too where like the enemy team has a much better frontline than you, like they have a Death Knight, Warrior, Ret Paladin, Enhancement Shaman, and then you've got like 2 Warlocks and a Shadow Priest. Yeah, at that point you might want to try to play for off carts too. So it's not completely black and white, but if you can start to learn to read team compositions and get in your mind how the opening fight will go, how they would stack up in a team fight scenario, you can get a better idea of how you should be playing the game, what your win condition should be. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the map review so I can break down the map and the strategies a little bit more before the general tips. All right, everybody, welcome to the map review portion of this guide. So to go ahead and get started, you're probably wondering why there's white circles on my screen. I went ahead and drew the white circles as the minecart positioning for the start of the game. As you can see, the middle cart is about halfway down the track, The top cart is also about a third of the way down the track, and then the lava cart spawns basically right as soon as the gates open, if not like a millisecond after. We'll go ahead and get started just with the opener. So for the opener for this battleground, the Horde has the advantage to start, but the Alliance is in a really good position to react. So what do I mean by this? So if you are the Horde, let me see, does the red show up well? Yeah, the red shows up pretty well. If you are the Horde, you are closer to the middle cart, which will be the first cart to cap, and if you can cap that, you get the residual points plus the 150 from it capping right off the start, and you are slightly closer to the switch to get the lava cart to go long as opposed to short. So if you look at the Alliance team composition and you're like, ooh man, this is a really scary team fight composition, and you're playing something like a rogue or a druid or a hunter with stealth, you have a slightly shorter distance to immediately run over to the switch and flip the cart. The trade-off is though is that the Alliance side actually has a slightly shorter distance to lava, so assuming that there's an equal amount of people running to each cart, the Alliance should in theory be able to take hold of lava first. Additionally, something that the Alliance can do is, even though top cart is kind of bait in sitting into it the whole time, is that you can tag top to get the residual points from it. You can run up this ramp right here, and there's a berserking buff right here that you can grab. Then you can kind of Batman jump off this ledge right here and have a better chance of outright winning whatever skirmish is taking place in the middle cart. And you could get a cheeky last minute capture as well if you want to play for that. So let's talk about power-ups real quick. There actually is no difference in Battleground Blitz from the normal Silvershard Mines mode when it comes to power-ups throughout the battleground, at least to my knowledge. I've not seen any of the new random power-ups elsewhere. So there's going to be a berserking buff on this ramp somewhere around here, and on this ramp somewhere around here if you were to go lava long. And then there's going to be the leaf buffs for mana restoration and health restoration down here next to lava, and then surprisingly there's going to be one hidden in the waterfall up here in mid. Not a lot of people know that. I know Vinruki has a recent Silvershard video where he actually goes and gets this leaf buff right here. But it's very critical to know if you happen to be a healer and you end up in a mid-fight skirmish. You can just quickly peel off, get a full mana bar while you're running back to support another fight. So if we're going for the team fight strategy and we're Horde, what we want to do is we want to send 1 or 2 people to go team fight mid, and then we want to just send the other 6 to lava. We really don't care about top in this instance because we only need control of 2 of the 3 carts to win. And so when you only have 8 people per team and you're trying to maintain majorities in multiple carts, realistically you can find yourself being okay with giving up one of the carts. And ideally, if you are going for the team fight strategy, you do want to look at this switch right here and make sure that it is not flipped, because your lose condition is actually getting split up to where you have like a cart here, you've got like a cart over here, and then you've got a cart over here, and you're trying to win team fights in 3 completely different areas of the map at the same time. It's just not going to work out. And if you're going against really strong skirmishing classes like rogues and druids, you are going to have a very miserable time. So you're going to want to look at these switches. You're going to want to make sure that your minecarts are going the shortest length possible so that you can rotate between the shortest distance possible and be able to win group fights over and over and over again. So let's talk about the off cart strategy. If you do have skirmishing capabilities and you want to play for off carts, so this scenario, what you would want to do is you would want to send somebody to go and flip lava long if you believe that you're going to lose the team fight, because as we've discussed earlier, you're splitting up the team of 8 people into 3 different zones on the map that are in completely opposite corners from each other. So those small skirmishes are going to matter a lot more. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to flip both of them to going the same way, because what will happen is you'll get yourself in a situation where the team fight composition will just team fight in this red ring right here as it's getting ready to capture. And then once it does capture, the next cart will already be in this area. So it's like, oh great, I could just go and win a second team fight, and then you gimp yourself out on getting multiple carts. So it's important with these switches that you know which way they're going and that you're only flipping one of them to create pressure by forcing small skirmishes on these corners of the map right here. And realistically, it can seem confusing at first just because this battleground is so different from all the other battlegrounds, as it's like a zone control type of thing. And we'll see this a lot more with Deep Hall Ravine, just because that battleground that's coming out in the next expansion is going to embody a lot of this type of principle. But the long and short of it is there's only really 2 main strategies you can go for when it comes to winning this battleground. Something else I want to talk about is if you're a class that has a knock, so I'm thinking of my hunters, my mages, and my shamans out there, and with some minor knockbacks too, like if you're a druid by chance, is that there are really good knock points in the game. I'll go ahead and circle it with my yellow pen. So there's a knock point right here, There's a knock point right about here somewhere. And then there's knock points like here, here, on these bridges right here, where you can get people out of the ring. Or if you're like down at lava, you can actually knock people into lava. That's a really fun time. And even on mid cart too, just because the cart is moving up a Z-axis slant right here, you can knock people a lot further back than you would be able to if you were on flat ground. And this is really good for being able to get people out of the ring. And if you can knock all of the enemies out of the ring, as we've discussed earlier, you capture it at 3 times the speed. So knowing where those points are going to be very important for helping your team out if you have a knockback ability. But let's go ahead and dive into the general tips for this battleground. Alrighty, moving on to the general tips segment is that crowd control matters infinitely more than damage. I know in my Warsong Gulch and my Twin Peaks guide I said crowd control matters significantly more than damage. In Silvershard Mines, crowd control matters infinitely more than damage. This is because if you're using your crowd control well, like your roots, your slows, your knocks, and your other crowd control to keep enemies out of the carts, you in theory can win this battleground with 0 kills. Because you just keep your team's majority inside the ring the whole time, you will have control of the cart, you will get the residuals, you will get the cart caps, and it is just absolutely insane how good crowd control is on this map. Make sure if you've got crowd control that you're using it, you're abusing it, you're doing everything you can to keep enemies outside of the ring. This goes hand in hand with my next point, which is fight inside the ring. Please fight inside the ring. Oh my god, the amount of times that my DPS players just stand outside the ring and PvE DPS, just it makes me go crazy. So please, if you're watching this guy, just fight inside the ring. If you're a caster and you have to cast, I know every caster DPS has some form of instant cast ability that they can use to keep damage going while they're moving, so that when they get inside the ring, you can then use your cast abilities like your Chaos Bolts or whatnot. But I even wrote it down here. If you're not inside a ring, or if you're not rotating to another ring, you are wrong. There are only 8 people in this map per team, are only split between 3 minecarts. A lot of these majorities that I've been seeing when I've been playing Silvershard Mines that can put control of the minecart in one faction or the other have only been from a majority of 1 person. I cannot stress how important this is, that you are playing the objective and fighting inside the ring. But yeah, moving on to the next tip. Use your mobility cooldown sparingly. So just as I've mentioned earlier, to abuse your crowd control and make sure that you are keeping the enemies out of the cart, understand that the enemies are going to be doing the same thing to you. So when the enemies use their crowd control, their knocks, their roots, their slows, their everything to keep you out of the cart, and you have a mobility cooldown, you can use that in response to get back in the cart and mitigate the amount of time that you are outside of the cart for. So I know a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll actually like run to the middle area and then they'll dismount and then they'll use their mobility to get into the cart for the first time. I would avoid doing that if you can. Or if you are doing it now, just be a little bit more mindful of how you're using your mobility cooldowns. The next tip I got for y'all is to not overcommit to a cart. You only need a +1 majority to flip a cart in your favor. And as I've said earlier, there are 3 carts with 8 people to split between those 3 carts. You will need to rotate to these fights more in Battleground Blitz than you would in a rated Battleground or in a normal Silvershard Mines with the 10v10 mode. So if you see you've got like a 1v1 or an enemy sends a second person to deal with one of your teammates, you only need to send 2 people to go there. You don't need to send 4, you don't need to send 5 to win that minecart. You only need to send the minimum amount to obtain a majority at a minecart as it's getting ready to cap, for that cart to cap in your favor. The last general tip I've got for y'all is to call inks. If you're a little bit newer to Battlegrounds, ink stands for incoming. So you just type in the general instance chat to let people know which cart needs help and how many people your team should commit. If you happen to be monitoring lava while your team goes to team fight at the mid cart and you see 2 people that are coming, you would say lava ink 2. And that would tell your team that you have 2 people coming to you. They need to send either 2 people or slightly more to help you out to secure that cart. So the last thing I want to go over is knowing when to flip the switches to send the carts long as opposed to short. We talked a little bit about this already in the map review, but I want to go ahead and cover the point again just so that you guys have a good enough idea and you're confident enough in knowing when's a good time to flip the cart versus not. So you should change the cart tracks to go long in the following instances if you are not confident that you will win the team fight, if your team benefits better from small skirmishes, or if you're playing for off carts. These are all kind of one and the same, and I know it can be a lot if you're in the starting room trying to think of a good strategy or what's going on. Do you want to flip? Do you want to not? What's your team comp look like? What does the enemy team comp look like? These would be things to consider if you are going to change the cart tracks. Personally, I believe that you would benefit more from changing the lava track long and keeping the top track short, but you also could do top long and lava short. It's just I don't really see the point of that in a team fight composition if lava captures only every 90 seconds or so. So I'll go ahead and close up the guide there for today. The intent of these guides are not to be as long as possible, it's just to be as thorough as possible and get you as much useful information as I can to help you increase your win percentage in Battleground Blitz with some cool tips, tricks, strategies, the like. And I do want to be respectful of your time in that regard. And I'm so appreciative that you would click on my video to learn from me. It does mean a lot, especially if you've watched to this long in the video. Do keep in mind that there will be a community post right after I upload this video, allowing you to vote for what map you'd like to see next. I do this to prioritize helping the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time, but I will be covering all the maps eventually. If you do have any questions, I do read every comment and I try to get back to as many people as I can, so go ahead and drop a comment below. And I hope that I was able to teach you some cool things about Silvershard Mines. If you do enjoy this style of content, it would mean a lot if you could support the channel. But until next time, this is Moon, pushing the minecart in Silvershard Mines, and signing out.